Welcome everyone. This is going to be intro to microdosing, and I'll share with you everything that I know about microdosing and a few things from my experience. So we'll talk today about microdosing, mini dosing, macrodosing, because people are confused about the dosage, and I want to kind of clarify a few things. Also, we'll talk about why one should microdose, what are the benefits, some of the protocols existent that are very useful and people have tried it, where to start when microdosing. I'll walk you through the protocol that I've developed when I was microdosing and really helped me. It was finding my sweet spot and then the systematic tracking. And then later we'll go into setting an intention and how to create the setting for supporting that intention. So a microdose is very subperceptual. It ranges from 50 milligrams to 250 milligrams. I know 250 sounds like a lot, but some people need that much just to have a subperceptual experience. We say it's subperceptual because you don't necessarily feel anything. You just feel like you have an extra boost in energy. You're excited about, the day and the things at hand and the tasks at hand, but you're not necessarily feeling anything. A mini dose, on the other hand, it's slightly bigger than a microdose, and it's just above the perceptual threshold. And it's just, if you were to take a mini dose, you would feel like, oh, the colors are a bit more vibrant than usual. You can feel the leaves breathing if you're in nature. You can see things, being a bit more alive, but you're still not not having a full trip. On the other hand, there is a museum dose, which ranges from 0.5 gram to 1.5 grams. And this museum dose is, you can definitely feel the effects of psilocybin mushrooms. And you are in a psychedelic trip. However, you are still in control of yourself and your thoughts and your emotions. I mean, things can be intensified and amplified. However, you don't lose touch with reality, this reality. You're very much functional. You can walk around, that's why it's called a museum dose, because going out in nature or at the museum, it's actually very pleasant. You get to experience art and the emotions that come through art a bit more vibrant, a bit better. And then we have a moderate dose, which is between 2 grams and 3.5 grams. And this is where you will definitely have hallucinations, you see patterns and fractals. You can see that in a museum dose too, but this is a lot more in depth and it will take a bit longer. And the perception of time and space kind of changes slightly, but you are still able to make sense of your surroundings. However, at the 3.5 grams, you might want to be lying down or be in a very comfortable, safe place. You don't want to be outside. And it can become more of an inwards journey. Anything above 3.5 grams, it's definitely going to take you to spaces where you are looking inwards. And a hero's dose or a mega dose, it's anything above 5 grams. And at that point, you're very much incapacitated. You definitely need a guide that's experienced with this kind of amounts of psilocybin mushrooms that can help you and guide you through any processing you need to be making, or actually guide you to washroom, because you're not going to be able to move your body as easily. So for the moderate dose and the mega dose, I would suggest having, if you're not experienced with psilocybin mushrooms, I suggest having someone there to watch over you, whether it's a trip sitter or a guide, an experienced guide. that know what they're doing, it's important to have someone there. Why microdose? There are so many reasons for why people microdose, and a lot of people microdose for mental health issues, like reducing anxiety and depression symptoms and feeling a lot better on a general level. But a lot of people also microdose, especially LSD, for performance, where you have an increased focus, or physical performance, where you have such a high boost of energy when you microdose LSD, and you get to perform at a higher level than normal. So it's focus, memory, attention, physical endurance, and all that type of stuff. And I kind of use LSD for that. When it comes to microdose and psychedelics in general, one of the benefits is the fact that, as I mentioned before, there is our brain starts functioning in different ways. Parts of our brain that used to connect before, they didn't used to connect before. Now they are connecting, and new neural pathways are being created and developed. And so this allows us to retrieve memories that we hadn't had access to before. It allows us to have insights that we haven't had access before. It allows for new ideas and creativity and an overall different state of being to happen. And so that neural connection that happens on a macrodose, it can be solidified when you start microdosing and implementing some of the insights that you had in a macrodose. So alongside with microdosing, you use behavioral and techniques or rituals on a daily basis and practices that will solidify those new neural connections. Another reason why people microdose, and I love this, is entering flow states and having more creativity. And so if you are, a creator and you've been blocked or something, something's been in your way, then microdosing or mini dosing can definitely, as I said, open up new ways of looking at things. So you get insight, you get creative, you start looking at things in a different light. And I used to, when I was living in Costa Rica, one of my favorite things to do to enter a flow state would be to go at the beach on a low tide day and do sand art. And just the activity of having the stick in my hand and then doing circles or different patterns and paying attention to the stick as an extension of me and pouring my whole, attention and focus into that while on a microdose, it was just so immersive, and I lost track of time. It was just so beautiful to do that. Okay, protocols. There are a few very known protocols. James Fadiman, the psychotherapist that kind of started the whole microdosing movement. He basically asked people to microdose and send him reports, and he released a guide in which he described how much people should take for a microdose and what should be the protocol within a week. And he's been getting a lot of feedback from a lot of walks of life, and there's so many great stories about how microdosing have changed people's lives. And to this day, we have a lot of anecdotal data that started with him and his initiative that supports all the claims that are made about microdosing, about the benefits that microdosing has. Paul Stamets, on the other hand, he's a mycologist, and he's been fascinated with mushrooms, since forever, really. And he lives in Canada, actually, in British Columbia, where I used to live. And he is not just interested in psilocybin mushrooms, but he's also interested in all sorts of other mushrooms like reishi and chaga and I can't remember some other turkey tail. And he has developed his own protocol where he combines psilocybin mushrooms with niacin and lion's mane. And that's mainly for people who have had strokes or have had some sort of brain injury, because in his theory is, as I said, microdosing benefits neurogenesis. And so people who have had some sort of brain damage, you can actually use microdosing and lion's mane and niacin together to repair some of the damage that has been done. And then there are some other protocols out there. As microdosing became more popular, a lot of people started, doing it. And now you have so many forums on Reddit and Facebook and Instagram and Discord, where you get to see other people and what they've done with microdosing, how they have personalized this practice for their own, for themselves. And so some of the protocols look like this. The Fadiman protocol, he suggests you take 1 day on psilocybin mushrooms and then 2 days off. The second day, you'll have a glow of the first day, and then the third day, you will completely go to baseline. And the reason for the break within the week is because as you take classic psychedelics like LSD and mushrooms, you do build a bit of tolerance. But the great news is that tolerance also resets very fast. So having these short breaks during the week actually get you back to the baseline. Stamets, on the other hand, he kind of developed two protocols. The first protocol was, 5 days on and 2 days off, but then he changed it to 4 days on to 3 days off. Another protocol I found that this is actually the one I started with. It was alternating, so every other day I would microdose. And that I really liked that one because, you have a baseline and then you start microdosing, you start feeling the benefits, and you're not dropping back to the baseline. Really, you keep going and keep compounding the effects over time. And so in the end, you'll have like an increased baseline. That's just my theory. It's nothing tested. So yeah. And one thing to remember is that everything is personalized. Unlike pharmaceuticals, microdosing should not be a practice that's done, on a consistent basis, just like drugs, because they're not drugs. Microdosing is a practice that definitely enhances your life. However, it should become more of an intuitive practice. So you should microdose only when you feel like you want to amplify something that needs amplifying in your life. And yes, if you're on a path of getting out of, depression or anxiety or something that's like very draining on your life, taxing on your life, then having like a longer microdosing period is important. But eventually you'll end up, you'll as I said, increase that baseline of yours, and you'll hopefully have other practices that support that baseline where you feel good without microdosing. You have great routines, and then microdosing just comes something once in a while that you feel into it. Where to start? Well, the golden rule is that comes from cannabis space actually, is to start low and go slow. And whether you start microdosing with LSD or with mushrooms, I like to start at a very low dose, 25 milligrams a day, and then follow Fadiman's protocol and just increase the dose for psilocybin mushrooms by 25 milligrams, or for LSD by 5 micrograms, and then observe and adjust. And I'll kind of talk about finding a threshold a bit later, where you get to understand how this protocol goes in place, like going slow, comes in place. But that's the general rule. And even if you're taking a big dose, I think that you can start with, say for example, you're going for 3.5 grams of mushrooms. I recommend you start somewhere around 1.5 or 2 grams. You take it, and then 1 hour later you can take another 1 gram and see how that feels. You can always add more, but you cannot really take it away once you've taken it. One of the things that I've noticed when I started microdosing is that microdosing, if it's a bit too high, you can have all these like unpleasant effects. You can feel like lightheaded, and you have a mild headache, and you can have like red or dry eyes, and you're constantly famished or thirsty. And it's like it's such a small difference in dose between the microdose and the mini dose, but it can make or break your experience. So attuning to self and paying attention is very important in this process where you find your threshold. Where was it? Oh, I guess I didn't add it. I did want to add here that when you find your threshold, it basically goes back to what I said before. You start very low. Like, say, for example, you're microdosing for the first time. You have no freaking clue what you're doing. You can start microdosing with 25 milligrams of mushrooms one day in the morning, preferably on an empty stomach, and just feel into how it feels. Attune to your body. Just slow down and pay attention. That's the whole point of this. To slow down and pay attention to yourself. And take notes. And then take 2 breaks off, 2 days off, and then move on to the 4th day, increasing that dose by 25. So next time you'll take 50 milligrams. And then another 2 days off, and then 75. And then you can go on and on until you find like that dose is, as I said, as an extra cup of coffee, makes you warm and fuzzy, brings you to life, but it doesn't give you any perceptual changes. That's kind of how microdose feels, and everything feels more like in flow. And yeah. I started doing systematic tracking because systematic tracking is what allowed me to collect personal data about different areas in my life where microdosing and how microdosing was impacting that. And so for the first 30 days, I would use this table, like whether it was a day on or off, I would write down the date, I would write down the time and the intention, and I would pay attention. I was paying attention to all these dimensions, like from mood, energy, creativity, but you can select 2 or 3 and just rank it throughout the day and how it feels. And then on a different journal or on the other page, you can make notes of qualitative data. This is more like quantitative data. And so when you look back, you get to see patterns in your reactions, in your emotions, in your behavior, and you get to identify how are you holding yourself back, right? And one of the patterns that I've noticed with me when I was microdosing psilocybin mushrooms versus LSD was that on psilocybin mushrooms, I was very much open to connecting with people, to hearing their stories, to share my experience, to be more vulnerable. And whereas with LSD, I was like in work mode, getting things done, feeling so excited about, doing a presentation or the website or whatever it was. but I was less social. So for me, it was clear that if I wanted to go to an event where I was socializing with people, where I was, you know, yeah, where I was socializing, then microdosing with psilocybin mushrooms would have been such a great candidate for that. And I would always choose it because it did make the, you know, the experience, the social experience, much better. All right, so let's talk about set and setting and the intention. So basically, I want to start with the intention, which is at the bottom. An intention is not a goal. It's not something that you need to achieve. It's not something that if you didn't get there, then everything failed. And it was just it wasn't good, right? An intention is more like an anchor. So say, for example, you know yourself that you are a type of person that's a bit more uptight or controlling. That was my case. And you want to let go of that a bit, right? Then your intention could be, I want to be open to new things that come into my life that seem to be disturbing my set schedule or what I had in mind, my plans, but I just want to be open. And so every time something like that happens while you're microdosing, well, microdosing will also amplify your frustration, but remembering this intention can actually allow you to explore what is behind this. Like, why are you being uptight? Why is this an issue? And getting curious and being open to what is present, it can give you a lot of answers. So that's the intention. It's like always a reminder of the new way of being you're trying to kind of embody. Set and setting. The set and setting has been coined by Timothy Leary, and it refers to the mindset and the environment you are in when you are microdosing or macrodosing. And those two are very important because, as I said, psychedelics are non-specific amplifiers. So whatever it's here, it's going to be amplified. And one of the ways I like to, support this intention, all the set and setting always are supporting this intention that you are having when microdosing. And the way I was supporting my intention of staying open is I knew that I had to ground myself before starting microdosing. So, I would always microdose around 9 in the morning. And before that, I would lie down on the floor and kind of scan my body and just feel what was there. And there were sometimes images coming, memories, sensations, and I would just like be there present with that. And then I would have my intention to be open, and then I would microdose. So with the grounding practice, I was always preparing my mental state for stillness. And then the setting, the environment, I would like the first time when I microdosed, it was so bad because I did it at the office, where at the job where I was working, and that was a day of a lot of deadlines and meetings, and it was very stressful in itself. So the setting, the set was probably not the best, and so to support my intention of staying open and being less controlling and things like that, I chose to do it on a day where I knew I didn't have so much on my plate. And so that's very important to keep in mind because you have control over how you experience your design, how you design your experience. It's not like things are happening to you. You have the agency to bring yourself and to shift things in a way that are more supportive of you and your life. So this is just a small example of that, right? With the intention, the set and setting. All right, so I think we are at the end of our presentation. I will stop this and I will stop the recording as well. And I want to hear from you and see if you have any questions. Let me see. Okay, I'm trying to stop the recording.